Okay, the Sky Cricket podcast has moved to St Lucia, the land of the late Nobel laureate Derek Walcott, and of course Darren Sammy, who's probably done more than anybody else to put St Lucia on the cricketing map. Myself and Nasser in the same hotel, but hopefully distanced. I'm in the block 2. I suspect you're a long way distant from me, Nasser, or at least I hope so. How are you? I've got news first of all. We are big in the British Virgin Islands. In our hotel in Antigua, there was a young man came up to me. He said, "I'm from the British Virgin Islands." The first thing he said to me, "When's the next podcast coming out?" So we have got one listener in the British Virgin Islands. How are you?
We are going global, aren't we? After Nepal and now the British Virgin Islands, which I have no idea where that is, by the way. I'll get onto my map after we've done this. I'm good. We landed in St Lucia. We were on the England charter last night. We've not seen much of it. We came in about midnight, but I like St Lucia actually. It's more mountainous, isn't it? So I might go for a run or a walk. Let's say a walk up in the hills a bit later.
Yeah, England look pretty relaxed. They've got a lot of them have got their families with them, and they were on our charter. And what struck me actually was that when we landed and we were waiting for our bags, the charter was immediately taking the Australian players who'd obviously just played here the night before, I think, against Scotland. They were taking them back to Antigua for the start of their Super 8 stage there. So it was just a reminder what a logistical challenge this World Cup has been, actually, given that it's over, 6 or 7 countries in the Caribbean and, of course, the US leg, which has finished now. But given that logistical challenge, it's gone off pretty smoothly so far.
It has for you, yeah, definitely. I mean, you spent a week in Antigua and Barbados waiting for a game of cricket, and that game of cricket lasted 99 balls, and then you waited another couple of days and the next game of cricket lasted 120 balls. You are literally, I don't know, who would I compare you to, like Dinesh Karthik. You don't do a lot and then you come in right at the end, smash it around a bit and make loads of cash or whatever. So you are our finisher. It has been a logistical nightmare. The other thing I noticed actually was that England obviously very pleased to qualify, played some good cricket in Antigua, but Liam Livingstone sort of strolled onto that charter last night, and that's the only negative about Antigua for me was, and I'm sure we'll get an update in the next couple of days, but Liam Livingstone just felt his side, didn't he, walking off, and he didn't field. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and we'll get news about that, no doubt, in due course. Have you ever played in St Lucia? I don't think I did, actually, because when we toured here in the kind of early and mid-90s, St Lucia wasn't really on the cricketing map in terms of, international cricket. When England came here, I can't even remember that we played any games in St Lucia. Certainly the Darren Sammy Stadium didn't exist then, so they had a ground down in Castries, and the only time I can remember coming was for a Lancashire post-season tour, not a pre-season tour. So you can imagine what a post-season tour was like in St Lucia. And my only memory is of Paul Allott, who was right at the end of his career, huffing and puffing in, as he used to do, as you well know from having faced him, and full of fire and brimstone, but bowling at about Paul Collingwood's pace and continually getting whacked into Castries by some bright young thing. And so he's standing there with his hands on his hips, the double teapot, sledging this young man who was hitting him further and further into Castries. So that's my only kind of cricketing.
I bet the big Wally took that really well. I mean, he wasn't quick on the quickest, bounciest pitch in Old Trafford. So how was he going to be quick on a slow one in the Caribbean? So that's, did you do the game here? Wasn't it here that Mark Wood bowled the speed of light? I've not played here, but I've commentated here. Mark Wood bowled the speed of light here, a bit quicker than Paul Allott, I guess.
Absolutely. I reckon that may be the quickest spell I've seen from an England bowler, actually. He came into that series, can't remember what year it was, probably about 2017 or something, came into that series late, and he hurtled in and bowled the speed of sound here in St Lucia, and a spell that as quick as I've seen, I think. I mean, up with his own spell at Headingley in the Ashes, and then Devon Malcolm's great spell at the Oval, 9 for Stephen Harmison and his pomp. We've not not had lots and lots of genuinely quick bowlers, but the handful that there have been eye-catching, and nothing better than watching somebody like Mark Wood steam in. Of course, he didn't play in England's last game, so we'll get on to England in due course. But we should start with the group stages, really, which are virtually coming to an end now. The Super 8s are decided with England, West Indies, South Africa, and India, Australia, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. USA, the fourth side, of course, in England's Super 8 stage. So as we've come to the end of this, the last game, I think, is Tuesday. As we come to the end of the group stage games, just what are your general thoughts and overview of what you've seen so far? Not so much the cricket themes, which we'll get onto, but just kind of how it's gone, the standard of play, the grounds, the pitches, the crowds, the general feel of the group stages.
I've enjoyed it. It's not been what some people thought it would be, although we said before a ball was bowled that be careful that it's not going to be a slugfest, as Rob Key described the last tour out here, and especially on the back of the IPL. I felt it was going to be lower scoring. There's some things they couldn't control. Obviously, the weather, we're just getting into rainy season, and that has a knock-on onto pitches. I was speaking to the Barbados groundsman, and because of the weather, it can be so hit and miss at this time of year. It can be absolutely roasting, boiling hot, and they don't know how much moisture to put on the pitch, and they then put a lot of moisture on, and then the showers roll in, as we've had plenty of, so they can't quite get the right moisture into the pitches as if it was non-rainy season, when they pretty much know how much rain they're going to get. So they've had a few issues, and then you end up having used pitches as well, as we saw yesterday or the day before on England's second game. A bit of rain on it, it got damp, and then a little pieces came out of it. So the pitches have been low scoring, especially that one in New York. And I know we'll discuss it because that has a knock on into this now Super 8 stage, because all those Indian batters, for example, Virat in particular, you go to the next venue and you're searching for a bit of form and a bit of nick. So those nets in Barbados are going to be vital just to get batters back in nick. I've enjoyed the venues, really enjoyed the two venues in America, Dallas and the one in Long Island, New York. Barbados, you can never go to Barbados, as you know, you have a mansion there. You can never go to Barbados and have a bad time, a bad cricket match, unless you're playing in our era. It's just a great place to play cricket. So I've enjoyed it. It has been a logistical nightmare. We've had different conditions, different pitches. Some may say that you'd want a bit more sixes and fours, especially if you're trying to sell the game globally. And I've enjoyed the associates. I really have. They were under pressure, 20-team tournament. Can you deliver? And most of them have really put on a show. And I know you've written about it today, that they now need more exposure, and they deserve more exposure from what they've shown in this tournament.
You mentioned the low scoring games. Just reflect on that a little bit. Obviously, conditions, more than most games, conditions determine and dictate cricket. Even the best players, the great players, have to kind of adapt their own game to conditions. There's no question that the lower scores in this competition so far are a reflection on the pitches generally that we've played on. But do you also think that tournament play lends itself to lower scores than franchise play, for example? We were chatting to Owen Morgan on the flight last night, weren't we? We came in late last night. Owen was with us, and we're talking about the 2019 50-over World Cup that England won. And everybody going into that tournament, that was on the back of a couple of 400 scores that England had made in the run-up to that 2019 World Cup in 50-over cricket. Yet you got to the competition itself, and the scores were much lower. And it's not just the pitches, it's the kind of games carry much more on them. You have one bad game in your initial group stages, as New Zealand did against Afghanistan, and you suddenly find yourself almost out of the competition or teetering on the brink. England teetering on the brink after one washout against Scotland. So when the consequences are that much higher, when jeopardy is that much higher, and when you know that defeat is much more consequential, does that also have an impact upon the free nature of batting and scoring, even in T20?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I think that was the case in the last T20 World Cup. Everyone, expected it to be massive scores in Australia, and they were slightly lower. And obviously pressure on groundsmen again to produce pitches time after time. But the main thing is pressure on batters and the fear of losing, the fear of going out. And I think that's why England did such a good job in Antigua. They were no fault of their own, last chance saloon, apart from a heavy loss against Australia, which can happen to anyone in this tournament. You then have to go and produce your A game against two associates, and they did that. So that there is that sort of jeopardy of if you don't go hard. England generally in any format now, what's their mantra when they've just been defeated is go hard or go harder in any of their formats. But that is a bit harder, if you know what I mean, when if you get it wrong, you're knocked out. I think what helps England is their batting depth. Is that, even like in that reduced game the other day, they can leave out Will Jacks, and you still at the end there, Liam Livingstone's only facing a few deliveries. So I think batting depth in tournament cricket is very important, because then you can continue your mantra that you do in bilateral cricket. So yeah, that is a good point. Generally in tournament play, scores are slightly lower.
You touched on the associates. We should talk about that a little bit more in depth, because obviously that's the whole point of a 20-team tournament and group stages, which involves so many associates. And we obviously saw excellent wins for USA in particular. That was the win of the tournament so far, wasn't it? USA over Pakistan. Canada beat Ireland. Nepal should have beaten South Africa. It was quite late that game. We were in Antigua at that point, and I was watching the last few overs of that. I don't know whether you caught any of it, but they should have beaten South Africa. They had quite a tight game last night as well, but they should have beaten South Africa. I had Sean Pollock on speed dial, ready to go, just in case Nepal got over the line, and they should have got over the line. When Nokia bowled that 19th over, and he bowled a slower ball that went about 110 meters out of the ground. I thought, well, they're home here. And what struck me was that in the very first game that Nepal played, there were some images doing the rounds on social media about the scenes in Kathmandu and elsewhere across the country. Thousands and thousands of people having gathered to watch the big screen or gathered in a stadium to watch their team. And really, that, we're thinking of Andrew Leonard as well, of course, who our great friend who was on the podcast just before the start of the tournament and really talked up Nepal. He said they're going to be the next Afghanistan of cricket. And you can see why, not just the kind of the competitiveness and quality of the play, but that enthusiasm and passion for cricket in the country there that is ready-made to exploit. And they should have won that game, shouldn't they?
They should. Absolutely. I was watching in my hotel room, and I did have Polly just about going to WhatsApp him. They'll be so disappointed. Andrew Leonard was giving it the big one throughout the tournament, wasn't he? He was walking around with all the Nepal fans, taking selfies, and he'd have been an absolute legend if they'd won that game. I think what I thought with some of the associates, not all of them, definitely not USA and Scotland, was in the field, they punched above their weight with their bowling and their fielding. And Nepal, last night they restricted. Who were they playing last night? Bangladesh, yeah. With the field and with the ball, I think they do really well. It's the batting at times, especially if there's pace in the opposition. So like Oman, with the pace and bounce against England in Antigua, they really struggled. Namibia against Australia really struggled, 70 all out. So that is where the exposure. I did the player of the match and the captain's interviews in that game against Oman, and it reminded me of what Andrew said about the Ed Joyce quote when he played for Ireland and they got blown away in a World Cup game. And is this the reason why associates Ireland weren't an associate then? They are now. Is this the reason why associates shouldn't play World Cup cricket? And Joyce gave an excellent answer. No, this is the exact reason why they should. And I nearly put that to the Oman captain when they were all out for 40 odd and lost in 3 and a bit overs. Is this the reason why you need to play more so you get used to the pace of Wood and Archer. Two things with that. One is there needs to be a cut-off. You could say that to anyone. To get to improve, you have to play at a higher level. But where's the cut-off? That you have to be quite close to that level to be able to take a place at the table. And the other thing is, as you've said, more exposure. But where do you fit that into a congested calendar? It's all well and good saying associates need to play more, but then you think about all the other nations are playing, the amount of cricket they're playing. How do you fit them? How do you say to England, right, you need to fit in your calendar that's already stretched, or India or Australia? Could you have a little series against, go to Nepal and play? It would be great. Go to Nepal, go and play. They do play Netherlands quite a bit, England. So a congested calendar to get even more cricket in, how would you do that?
Well, yeah, no, it's an absolutely fair point in terms of getting exposure against the test playing nations. Obviously, the pyramid structure now in T20, which allows everybody a chance to get in there, is a good thing. I mean, I just think generally from what I've seen that I fundamentally agree with two things. One, that T20 is the right vehicle to globalize the game. And secondly, that an expanded T20 World Cup, therefore, is absolutely essential in terms of the 20 teams that we've seen here. And that generally the gap is narrowing all the time. I mean, it narrows anyway with T20 because T20 tends to compress things, doesn't it? It's a harder game to call. You know, anything can happen in T20. It's more unpredictable. And so that narrows the game anyway. But I think the standards are narrowing with all the commitment, investment, time and resources that is going into associate cricket. I mean,
what about Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to touch on Scotland, but there were obviously some one-sided games that you talked about. Uganda, I think, were bowled out for 30 odd, weren't they, by West Indies? We did that game against Oman that lasted 99 balls, and they are unsatisfactory games. Let's be fair, but I think that is outweighed by the upside of seeing a Nepal. Or a Scotland or a USA in particular in this tournament. I think the upside outweighs the short-term downside of some uncompetitive games. We should touch on Scotland because we got a bit of tap under the line from one or two of our listeners.
You did. You're the host. You bring up the topics. So you got a bit of abuse under the line.
So we kind of ignored Scotland a little bit last time, but they actually have looked a strong side to me and can go home with great credit, I think. I mean, we'll come on to that Australia game just now, but generally, I thought they looked to play an aggressive form of the game, which is obviously what you have to do in T20. People like Munsey, McMullen have had good tournaments. They look aggressive at the top of the order. They don't look overawed by the pace in the way that some of the other associate nations have. And I like their attack. It's full of variety, left arm, pace, spin, three different types of spin. And it looks like, perfect kind of variety for a T20 attack. And you could argue in that Australia game, they were one drop catch in the final over away from taking Australia down. And so they can go home with a lot of credit, I think, from the way they've played in the group stages.
Absolutely, and they're one of the sides, like with USA, where their batting didn't look out of place on this stage at all. I mean, you look against England at Barbados, and I wonder on that flight home, what's hurting them more, that they didn't have the chance of defending that score against England, which I know Matthew Mott said he felt they would have chased down England, but we'll never know, and Scotland will never know. They could have won that one. And Australia, they were in such a good position against Australia. And they just had a bad, as you can do here, bad 3 or 4 overs where Stoinis in particular, but Stoinis, and then, at the end, David smashed a few and they misfielded a couple. And there was an early catch where Head was put down. But I wonder which one hurts them more, the Australia defeat or not being able to defend against England, because they could have, they were a whisker away from topping the group. They beat Australia. They go to 7 points, and they're on top of a group that contained England and Australia. They had a bad weekend. They got hammered at the football against Germany and then lost to Australia, a game they played so much good cricket in.
The backdrop to that game were the comments from Josh Hazlewood, of course, where he talked about, the chance to take England out of the group, which were picked up on. Obviously, I mean, it set the hairs running, and then I think Australia realised that they'd messed up with those comments, so they wheeled out St Patrick Cummins and Mitchell Starc after that to play down those comments, to kind of pour cold water on those comments. I think one of them said it was tongue in cheek, and the other one said, the media made too much of it. But I'm afraid when you make those comments, the media are going to pick up on them, and it set their hairs running. But in the end, Australia got home. I was watching that game, and I thought at one stage, just about when Stoinis came in, I thought they're struggling here because they were way behind the rate. And then Stoinis, who's having a good tournament, we'll come on to what we think is the team of the tournament so far slightly later. But he then provided the injection and the power that he seems to in that lower middle order to get them over the line. But it was a close run thing. I wonder what the scenes were like in the England team room, if indeed they were watching. I don't know. Josh Butler said it was a nervy time. I suspect they had half an eye on it, if nothing else. But my, oh my, I was nervous enough watching it. I don't know what they were like.
Well, I think Mel Jones interviewed Harry Brook because he was the player of the match in the game that we were doing in Antigua against Namibia. And Harry, being Harry, went, "It's a bit past my bedtime now. I've not been staying awake for the late evening games." So I think he was fairly chilled about it. I fell asleep and then woke up to watch it because it was late. And then I woke up. And when I woke up, Scotland were winning the game. Scotland were ahead in the game, and like I say, they'll be disappointed with the way they finished. I mean, you know what? I'm sort of pleased Australia won, because otherwise the headlines and social media would have been all conspiracy theories, because there were 6 drop catches, and it would have been all about
left out Cummins and
moral victories. We'd have gone through Bairstow Gate all over again, So I'm sort of pleased Australia won. All I know about the Hazlewood comments is that I have never known an Australian team. I know you gave one example of a previous World Cup when it was a different setup, but I've never known an Australian team just not rock up and give it their absolute best. They may rest a couple of people, as they did. That's well within their right. They're here to win a tournament, not just a one-off game. But I always had the feeling they were going to rock up, and however much it hurt them to let England go through with them, they were going to do the right thing, and I think they did.
Well, absolutely. We've all played against Australia enough to know that they're gonna try and win the game, which they did do. But it was a kind of sloppy performance from them. They dropped a few catches in the field, and as I said, we're looking a bit shaky with the bat. So we'll wait and see how the group, the Super 8 stage goes. So let's turn our attention to England's group, which is West Indies, South Africa, and USA. They play West Indies and South Africa in St Lucia. That's on Thursday and
Wednesday UK, Wednesday night,
exactly late. And then USA and Barbados. I mean, the West Indies first in St Lucia. It's going to be the first time that England will have played in front of a crowd. I mean, West Indies games are at 8:30 at night. Apart from the first game in Georgetown in Guyana, which was at 10:30 to kind of kick the tournament off. I think part of the agreement was because there's a lot of starts that have been at 10:30, which is not entirely satisfactory, but it's for the Indian TV market. But West Indies have got an agreement that all their games will be at night. So we'll get that party atmosphere, the carnival atmosphere that we saw in Trinidad recently, that England haven't really seen so far. And one was assumed there'll be a crowd on, and very much a home crowd. Obviously, we're in St Lucia. So it'll be the first time that there'll be that feeling of that you are up against a team with the crowd on their side in this game.
Yeah, and Darren Sammy at the Darren Sammy Stadium as well. So I mean, home advantage is a big thing in World Cups. Obviously, we've seen that, not so much in T20 World Cups. England went to Australia and won, but in general, home advantage and conditions and pitches and being used to, just small things like dressing rooms and whatever, hotels, whatever, you feel very comfortable in. And England have had, if anything, because they've been Barbados and Antigua, they've had a few Brits that have come over and followed them. So it's felt like home games for them. So this will be a different feel. They have a lot of players that have played big games and played in big crowds. Half their team have come from the IPL, and every game is a big crowd. So that won't faze them at all. West Indies, as we speak, are unbeaten. They play Afghanistan tonight, who are also unbeaten. So that record, unless it rains, will have to go. But they've played some good cricket. They're in this format, they are excellent. So we had Johnny Grave, the chief exec, on the flight with us. He seemed pretty thrilled with the way they're playing and the way the tournament has gone. And obviously for him and the tournament in general, it would be good for West Indies to go through. I don't know what the challenges are. I think it would suit England here in that it's a good pitch here. From what we've seen so far, it's probably, with Dallas, been the best pitch, bigger scores. And I think that suits England's style and mode of play. They want to go hard. They have batters that go at the ball, the likes of Salt and Jackson, Butler, Bairstow, go hard at the ball. And on a good pitch that goes through, that brings that strong batting lineup into play. But obviously, West Indies, as England know, have some very, very big hitters. And then South Africa. How have your hot tip? I mean, you've said you've gone all in with South Africa again. Never mind texting Sean Pollock about Nepal. You must have had a bead on sweating about all your cash with South Africa.
Well, yeah, they're only squeaking over the line at the moment. I'm hoping that the best is yet to come. But their top order hasn't really fired. I mean, on paper, they look an excellent team still, but you wouldn't say that they've hit top gear yet. And that's going to be the second game that England play here in St Lucia. So it'd be very interesting to get kind of a close look at them. And then we go back to Barbados, and you've seen USA, Nas, live. What are the threats that USA will offer England from what you've seen?
In all departments. They've got all departments covered, and I think the threat of taking them lightly has gone. For example, you may turn up first game USA and think, okay, we should win this one, and then it's that banana skin. I think that's gone. I think they'd have seen them, seen how good they are, seen the likes of Aaron Jones and Gauss at the top of the order. They've seen Netravalka with his left arm, bowls well at the start, bowls well at the death. I mean, he is a real story in the tournament, isn't he? He's been thanking Oracle. He works for the Oracle, the software engineer, and overnight he's been thanking them for extending his stay at the World Cup. That will keep you in the job at Oracle a little bit longer. So, he got Kohli out first ball. He got Rohit Sharma out. He bowled that super over against Pakistan. They have good spin options. They're very good in the field. So that it's just not. We get to the stage now that England will just rock up and pretend they're playing, whoever, India or whatever, and be wary of them because they're coached by Stewie Law, who will want to get one up on the old enemy. They've got Corey Anderson in their middle order. Obviously ex-New Zealander, but now lives in Dallas and plays and is settled in Dallas and plays for America, and he gives them some experience in that middle order. So that'll be a tough game. England will want to go there, pretty much hoping that the job's done, but it's never done in Super 8. You probably have to win all three in this group, I'd say. This silly thing to say, but you look at those teams and people ask which is the easiest side to be in. At this stage, just take care of business. I don't think there is an easier side. The only thing is, with all this, like I mentioned earlier, South Africa batters, India batters, anyone who's batted at New York for a while, just try and get into the rhythm of batting again. So whether it be in the nets or whatever, is that, you think of Markram, you think of Quinton de Kock at the top of the order. They just looked like they were out of rhythm, having batted for a while in New York. So getting your batters back in nick for maybe some good pitches here or Barbados or wherever is going to be vital.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing England managed to do in the last game, albeit shortened as it was get a bit of batting time into Bairstow and Brook. Not very much, but they left Will Jacks out, so shoved Bairstow and Brook up the order. I don't know whether they'll revert back to Will Jacks now, but one or two. England looked pretty relaxed despite the squeaking through that group. But Topley has obviously come back in, done well. Archer's going as well, I think, as they would have hoped. A bit of batting time for Bairstow and Brook, and the only dark lining to the cloud at the moment is the injury to Liam Livingstone. So we'll wait and see.
Will that just be Curran in for him? Do you think? I mean, Curran played in the last game, but if they bring Jacks back in, do you think as the all-rounder slot they've got that covered anyway?
Yeah.
I know he's a different cricketer. Obviously, they don't have that spin option, but here in St Lucia, they may just play Jacks back in and keep Curran in.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think that, there's any replacement across the game for Livingstone in terms of just what, not that he's been a peripheral presence so far, but somebody who bowls leg spin, off spin and whacks it down the order. There's not many of those around. So we'll see whether he recovers from the side strain. And what about the team of the tournament? We were nattering about it on the plane yesterday, trying to come up with 11 players who've just done well in the group stages. At this stage, we came up with Gurbaz at the top of the order, didn't we? Who's had a good time of it for Afghanistan, along with Travis Head. Gurbaz can keep wicket. Brandon McMullen, who's had a good time of it for Scotland at 3. Aaron Jones, who you mentioned and you've seen for the USA, who played such a part in those early wins against Canada and Pakistan. Marcus Stoinis having a good tournament there in the middle order, along with David Miller. Actually, you mentioned South Africa's top order not firing, but they've been dragged out of trouble a bit by Miller and the lower order. And then the bowlers. What kind of bowlers did we come up with?
We had more of a row about the bowlers than about, and we're still rowing.
We row about everything, but go on.
We had Bumrah, obviously.
Yeah,
he's got to be in. Faruqi as a left armour. Now you could go the Fizz. Fizz had a good night last night, Mustafizur Rahman. But do we need 2 left armers? I've gone Zampa, Alzari Joseph is having a good tournament. That's who I went with.
Yeah, you wanted Akil Hussain as the
Akil Hussain as your spinner, second spinner with Zampa. One thing about that side is we have no England players in it because they haven't played that much cricket, I guess. They've only played a little bit of cricket. They had a 99 ball game, a 10 over game, a rained off game, and obviously that game against Australia. So what bowlers, what are we ending up with then? Because it's a long tail.
It's a long tail, but anyway, it's only a rough and ready guide to those who've done well in the group stages. But as you say, England, it's very hard to know really whether they're tracking well or not, because I put that to Josh Butler in the post captain's press conference or the presentation. You've had so little cricket, just no idea really how well you're going. And in any case, they're through. They're going to play West Indies in the next game, then South Africa, then USA. The group, the Super 8s look well set up for some entertaining cricket this week.
Name your team. Name your team. What is the team?
We had Gurbaz, Head, McMullen, Jones, Stoinis, Miller, Joseph, Akil Hussain, Adam Zampa, Fazal Haq Faruqi, Jasprit, Bumrah, who I wanted in. You were not keen on him, but that'll get social media on your case.
Our one listener in the British Virgin Islands has been waiting for that team. So there you go. You've got it.
Okay. Right. Well, I'll see you in breakfast in about 5 minutes' time. We can reconvene there. And looking forward to the Super 8s. And we'll catch up our next podcast next week. We will have seen the end of the Super 8. So we'll have plenty to chat about then.